Chapter 1. Vinnie Moretti. Vinnie leaned against the mahogany rail of his mezzanine office, staring down at the casino floor of the Golden Grotto. People moved like clockwork gears below, their laughter and gasps mingling with the rhythmic chime of slot machines and the muted roar of rolling dice. This was his domain, a palace of illusions built on the shifting sands of 1940s Las Vegas. He knew every corner, every table. He knew the dealers' subtle nods and the hidden exchanges, the ebb and flow of money and secrets. The Golden Grotto wasn't just a casino, it was Vinnie's lifeblood. A kingdom of chance and charade sprawled out before him, every table a battlefield, every slot machine a siren song. He observed intently, a chess master overlooking pawns. Down below, laughter erupted from Mr. Miller, a portly high roller whose debts were as towering as his stacks of chips. Slapping his knee, he turned to the dealer, eyes darting nervously despite the facade of joviality. His precarious position was no secret to Vinnie, who saw through the bravado to the desperation tethering Miller to the table. Near the entrance, Frankie's gaunt figure appeared, cutting through the crowd like a knife. The wiry chief of staff moved with purpose, his angular face a canvas of sharp lines and deeper shadows. Frankie had always been more than just muscle. Vinnie saw a thinker behind those sunken eyes, a strategist with whispering instincts that had often been their saving grace. Frankie reached the marble staircase leading up to the mezzanine office. The stairs gleamed under the warm, carefully positioned lights, each step cushioned with a rich red carpet that quieted Frankie's approach. Ascending the stairs, his hand glided over the polished brass railing, catching glimpses of his reflection in its gleam. The grandeur of the surroundings was undeniable, but Frankie remained focused on the task at hand. He could feel Vinnie's eyes on him, even before he reached the top. "Evening, Vinnie," Frankie greeted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of clinking glasses and fervent chatter. "Frankie," Vinnie nodded once, barely perceptible. His gaze lingered on the high-stakes blackjack table, where Mr. Miller basked in transient glory, surrounded by onlookers. "Think Miller's luck is going to hold up?" Vinnie's voice was almost a whisper, a gust of wind in the desert night. Frankie followed his gaze. "That man's been riding high too long. The fall's going to be hard." Miller caught sight of them, his laughter reaching their ears like the distant sound of a jingling safe. He raised his glass in salute. Vinnie acknowledged the gesture with a bare tilt of the head, an acknowledging monarch to a jester in his court. Mr. Miller, sensing an opportunity for a conversation, bellowed, "Vinnie, my friend, when will we share a whiskey again? It's been far too long." Vinnie's lips twitched, amusement etched briefly across his face. Descending the ornate staircase, he met Miller in the thronging heartbeat of the casino. "Miller," Vinnie began, the corner of his mouth upturned, "what's the difference between your poker face and your love life?" The high roller's chuckle rumbled through the crowd before he replied, "Enlighten me." "They're both an open book, and tonight, my friend, you're reading tragic comedy." Vinnie's timing was impeccable, eliciting a wave of chortles from the surrounding audience. Miller clutched his chest in mock pain, his generous belly shaking with laughter. "Vinnie, you slay me. You're the only man here who can make me feel like I've walked out of my own jokes." Vinnie's eyes glinted with mirth, but not without sharpness. "Keep your winnings closer than your punchlines, Miller. I'd hate for your laughter to end in tears." "You wound me deeper than a dealer's cut," Miller quipped, patting his tie as if straightening out the sting of the words. "I'll bet my bottom dollar you can't beat that hand with a straight face." Vinnie's laugh was genuine, a rare sound that seemed to take the weight from the air itself. "Miller, my face is the one thing you can't bet on, but your bottom dollar? That I'll take." The two men shared a knowing look, the thrill of the gamble running through their veins like a shared secret. Vinnie, turning back to ascend the stairs, called over the din, "Let's not have your bottom dollar becoming community property, eh?" Miller, his grin subsiding to a grimace as a card turned against him, replied with a nod. "Point taken, Vinnie. Point taken." "He doesn't know when to quit," Vinnie said, more to himself than to Frankie, who had joined him on the casino floor. "One of these days his luck's gonna run out." A measured pause peppered the air before Frankie spoke again. Should we be concerned, Vinny? He runs in circles we can't afford to ignore. He's an eager fish swimming with sharks. He thinks he's big game. Vinny's lips curved up ever so slightly. Keep an eye on him. I want to know the second he gasps for air. Aye, boss. Frankie cracked a smile that never reached his eyes. Their exchange was cut short by the arrival of a cocktail waitress, her tray a clutter of consumption. Vinny's eyes flickered to her badge, Marianne. He greeted her with a nod so small it seemed for his own satisfaction rather than any actual communication. Another round for Mr. Miller's table and make sure they're comped, he directed without really looking at Marianne. Yes, Mr. Moretti. She moved away, parting the sea of gamblers with practiced ease. Vinny's eyes followed Marianne as she glided away, balancing the desires of the patrons on her tray. A moment later, he turned to survey the profusion of faces at the tables. It was there he noticed a dealer, Max, with his shoulders hunched, a telltale sign. Vinny glided over like a shadow detaching from a darker corner. Everything all right, Max? Max's head snapped up, eyes wide, as if caught in a searchlight. Mr. Moretti, yes, everything's fine. Vinny's stare lingered, surgical, dissecting the nervous veneer. You keep glancing at the clock. You're sharper than that. What's got you distracted? The dealer's Adam's apple danced with a hard swallow. It's just, my kid's been sick. The babysitter's ours. They ain't cheap, Mr. Moretti. Vinny's gaze softened imperceptibly. I understand. Do me a favor. Focus on your work tonight and take tomorrow off. Spend it with your son. Max blinked, as if the words were a misdeal. That'd help more than you know, Mr. Moretti. Thank you. Vinny allowed himself a curt nod. And Max, he called back as he turned away. If you need anything for the little guy, you let Frankie know. A murmur rippled through the nearby tables and staff, Vinny's generosity and power mixing into a potent cocktail of loyalty and respect. People trusted Vinny, followed him, because even in his wrath, there was a hint of a guardian angel draped in a dark cloak. These exchanges were small, often missed amid the cacophony of ringing slot machines and the patter of dealers, but they were the sinew that held the muscle of the Golden Grotto together. Beneath the Grand Marquis, in the shadow of neon lights, the aura of a leader, both feared and revered, was shaped not by the heavy hands of the law, but by the gentle, unseen gestures of understanding. Vinny caught the briefest reflection of himself in the polished brass of the roulette wheel, a twist of shadows and light, a man who dealt in both fortunes and fates. Vinny's attention diverted momentarily to a table where a dealer executed his work with the mechanical precision of a clockwork, the flicker of trepidation in his gaze unnoticed by the merry partakers. You worry about the little guys too much, boss. Frankie's voice brought him back from his silent musing. Big sharks feast on little fish, Frank. Sometimes they get caught in the shallows, Vinny replied, eyes narrowing slightly as if sighting prey. Ebb and flow, the language of the casino whispered to Vinny. He watched as chips rained down on green felt like drops in an untamed ocean, as fortunes were rewoven with each flick of a card. Time, however essential to others, found no foothold here. It was in continuous cycle, profit and loss, cheers and sighs, until the rooster's call. Then the illusions would slumber, only to be resurrected in the twilight. Frankie remained silent, absorbing the accord. Vinny then swiveled, absorbing the pandemonium below before excusing himself for seclusion within his office. The door closed with a soft click, sealing off the cacophony of the casino. He moved to his desk, a fortress within a fortress, and poured himself a drink, the amber liquid catching the sparse light. His eyes came to rest upon the sepia photograph he'd left out earlier. Memories leaped forth, a long-gone era of loyalty and brotherhood embodied in the smiles of two young men. Himself and Benny. He lifted the glass to his lips, a silent toast to ghosts. A prosperous empire built on ghosts and gambles, he mused aloud, the silence engulfing his words as they hit the air. He set the glass down with the precision of a jeweler setting a diamond. A chink in the armor he had built so meticulously around himself revealed as he considered the photo with a blend of nostalgia and regret. Where did it all go so wrong, Benny? His voice, usually so confident, so assured, wavered like a candle in a storm. The photograph stared back in silence, Benny's carefree grin belying the gravitational pull of their shared history. No, Benny wasn't dead, not yet anyway, but he'd tumbled into a disarray that left him a shadow of the man he once was. Vinny glanced at his reflection in the darkened one-way mirror. The mirror offered no comfort, no condolence, no reprieve. It showed truth, cold, hard. He let out an inaudible sigh, his endurance a cape he once more draped over his frame. Vinny steeled his resolve, layering on the facade that commanded respect, subdued doubts, silenced pain. He stood and traversed to the concealed door where a hidden arsenal lay. He skimmed over the gleaming firearms, instruments of protection and power. A tool for every job, as Benny would say. The weight of a gun in his hand, an all too familiar presence, gave him a perverse sense of comfort. His fingers spun the barrel, the clicking sound a metronome to his heartbeat, a requiem to his solitude. Night had claimed its reign, the moon a judgmental eye peering into the kingdom of man. Yet, it would find no purchase here. The moonlight could not penetrate these walls, could not dispel the shadows, could not reveal the man Vinny had become. He was Vincent Moretti, king of the Golden Grotto, architect of fortunes, weaver of fates. The darkness wasn't failure, it was potential. And as night's curtain fell, he would emerge from the shadows, neither hero nor villain, but the man who would play the dangerous game to its bitter, inevitable end. Inside his office, the gray of evening crept in, sharpening Vinny's cast-iron silhouette as he leaned back against the plush leather of his chair. His eyes caught a glint from the photo on his desk. Two men, one a mirror of himself, youthful and confident, and the other, Benny, both savoring the spoils of a hard-won empire. He picked up the image, his fingers grazing over the glass, tracing the outline of their shared smile. "Remember this, Frankie?" Vinny asked, thumbing the frame, giving it a cursory glance, inviting memories into the room. "What's to forget? The day we turned a back alley into Broadway." Frankie's voice curled around the smoke from his cigarette. "Those suits cost more than most guys earned in a month." Vinny chuckled, his baritone tinged with a note of melancholy. "We thought we were kings of New York," he muttered, staring through the photograph as if it were a portal to the past. The memory opened like an old wound, edges rough to the touch. Vinny's laughter faded, replaced with a sigh that weighed heavy upon the room's smoky air. "Kings we were," agreed Frankie, "until pride and greed pulled apart the realm." Vinny nodded as he placed the photo back. "Don Antonio's smooth tongue brokered us peace, wealth. But it's the hunger that gets you. Benny always bit off more than he could chew." Frankie exhaled a smoke ring, nodding solemnly. "And look where that got him. The ostrich turned to ashes before it ever caught fire." Vinny's hand stopped midair, fingers coiling into a fist. "He didn't just burn his own nest, Frankie. He damn near lit up ours." "Yeah, well, the world spins and the reckless fall off," Frankie remarked. "You, on the other hand," he gestured around the plush office, "you spun it your way, Vinny." There was a clang as Vinny's ring met the desk, his thoughts churning like the storm outside. "Spin or be spun," he said, voice cold as the rain trailing down his office window. "We mastered the ropes in New York, but look at us now." Frankie inched forward. Benny lapped up the spotlight, but it's shadows where you dance best. Necessity taught us that. Right hook Benny and calculator Vinny, he reminisced with a crooked smile. Frankie laughed, recalling the moniker. And Don Antonio the peacemaker, until peace started costing too much. Silence filled the space again, this time with the gravity of unspoken truths. "The brotherhood we had, it was something out of a dream, huh? More like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from," Frankie muttered. He leaned in closer. "So, what's keeping you up at night now, boss?" Vinny swiped the photograph off his desk, a lion defending his territory. "Ghosts, Frankie. Ghosts of every street corner we turned, every deal we braved, especially the ones that went south." "South," echoed Frankie. "All the way to Vegas." "Vegas," Vinny's voice cut like diamond on glass, "where Benny tried to soar too high, poor Icarus. Dreamed up the ostrich, the grandest casino this side of the Mojave. Only he forgot to check his wings were made of more than wax and hot air." Frankie nodded. "While you built the grotto brick by brick, no wax, all iron and steel," Vinny smirked. "I cruised the streets of this desert, met every greaser, every hustler, and charmed them to our side. And Benny?" He flew, Frankie. He flew until the sun melted his dreams and he plummeted. Vinny's fist tightened. Straight into the mob's open palms. That jealousy, it wore him down, Frankie mused. Worse than that, it blinded him. He didn't see Don Antonio stepping back, giving him just enough rope. And he hung himself with it. Frankie's expression turned rueful. While you kept quiet, respected, distant enough from New York's heat. But not too far from its light, Vinny said, tapping the pocket where he kept his ledger, a ledger only a handful knew existed. Frankie glanced at the pocket, then back at Vinny. So what's next for the man who has everything? For the king who's conquered his own slice of the desert? Vinny's eyes flickered. Next? You know as well as I do, Frankie. The house always wins, but only if it's willing to risk the bet, and I have cards yet to play. The silence between them was a tightrope walked with care. They were architects of a future yet to unfold, master and confidant sketching blueprints in the dark. And the first move? Asked Frankie, his voice a whisper lost amongst shifting shadows. The first move, Vinny replied, is to remember how we got here, what made those kings of New York, what cost us our realms. He huffed out a cloud of smoke, diverting his gaze from the picture to the living relic before him. Before the empire, before the grotto, it was only us against a city of devils. You remember the bootlegging bust on 34th? Sirens, bullets, a symphony of the damned. We danced right through it. Vinny's voice hung mid-air, a loose thread in the fabric of now and then. Frankie nodded, the ghost of adrenaline flickering behind his eyes. We danced all right. Benny took the lead that night, didn't he? Couldn't see past his own shadow. He was always chasing something. The rain pounded harder as Vinny's laughter dimmed, the dull ache in his chest becoming undeniable. And it had to be the biggest, shiniest thing he could find, he said, his thumb pausing on a crease in the photo, a wrinkle in time separating young dreams from bitter consequences. Frankie leaned over the desk, his demeanor shifting to business. Benny always had taste, expensive taste, he said, flicking ash into a nearby tray. The ostrich's feathers were too heavy, too bright. They blinded him. That light's gone out, Vinny spoke into the emptiness of his glass, the ice chattering a hesitant agreement. All that's left is a dark alley and the echo of gunfire. Do you think it haunts him? Frankie asked, his words tiptoeing around the past. Vinny snorted. Ghosts don't haunt those without a soul to stir. He replaced the photo on the desk, a finality punctuating the movement. Silence nestled between them, the office harboring a stillness unfitting of the vibrant casino beyond the walls. The ostrich was meant to fly, Vinny. Benny was meant to soar, Frankie said. His voice, but he failed, Frankie. He failed all of us. The words left Vinny's lips with a leaden resolve that weighed them both. Frankie's eyes sized up Vinny. And what about you? You've built paradise in the desert sand, but does it weigh on you? The cost? The blood? Vinny's hand tightened around his glass. You pay for paradise, he swallowed, in more ways than one. He stood, the city lights reflecting off his windows, casting a chessboard of light and shadow across the room. To survive, you need to learn from the past, not live in it. With a final glance at the photograph that held a history of blood and bonds, Vinny turned from the memory, his focus sharpening on the empire that lay beyond the glass. An empire waiting for its king to move the pieces once more. You've stayed clear, Frankie pressed on, the layers of smoke concealing his probing stare. But that doesn't mean you're clean, does it? Vinny laughed, a shallow and hollow sound. No one in this game stays clean, you know that, Frankie. Makes you wonder, doesn't it, if Benny's drastic flair was all for naught? Frankie circled the desk, his arms folding as he leaned back with an air of certainty. He made his bed, Vinny. We all make choices. And now he's lying in it, Vinny said coolly, detached, right here in Las Vegas. There it was, the uncomfortable truth of the past come to roost in the present. Benny returned to the fold, seeking solace or perhaps salvation in the neon glow of Vinny's success. You think he's coming here to stir trouble? Frankie's gaze held an edge, sharply anticipating Vinny's command. No, Vinny affirmed. He'll be here to play a losing hand. He's a desperate man chasing ghosts of his own. Still, a wounded animal is dangerous. Frankie stood erect, the muscle in his jaw twitching with readiness. Vinny approached the window, his reflection a dark smudge against the casino lights. "Keep your friends close, they say," he murmured. "And your enemies closer," Frankie finished, the timbre of his voice betraying no hint of doubt. Vinny's eyes settled on the casino floor beneath them, a chessboard of chance and strategy. "He'll reveal his hand soon enough," he said, his voice sharpened by a strategist's resolve. Frankie remained silent, standing sentinel, ready to cast the first stone should the command be given. "But how close is too close, Vinny?" Frankie's inquiry carried a care that belied their hardened nature. Vinny turned from the window with a sigh that spoke volumes, meeting Frankie's stare. "Too close is when you can see the whites of their eyes," he said, a wry smile ghosting his lips. Frankie's lips twitched in response, a silent understanding shared between the seasoned warriors. The office door opened, and a crackle of voices and slot machines spilled into the room. Someone from the floor had urgent news, a pressing matter that couldn't wait. Vinny motioned for Frankie to handle it, an unspoken trust in his lieutenant's ability. Once more alone, Vinny poured another drink, the liquid fire forging a path of clarity. His mind, ever the battlefield, warred between the man he was and the empire he built. As the clinks of glasses and rolls of dice carried the tales of the grotto upward, Vinny Moretti stood firm against the tempest of time, his fortress solid, yet his soul ever vigilant against the specters of the past. Chapter 2. Benny's Demise. The rhythmic clatter of chips and the low hum of conversation pervaded the air at the Golden Grotto. From the mezzanine, Vinny's gaze swept over velvet-trimmed tables and one-armed bandits. He cradled a glass filled with his favorite old whiskey. It sent a sharp undertow beneath the more cloying fragrances of perfumes and luckless desperation below. A figure detached itself from the throng, sauntering to the high-stakes poker table. The murmur on the floor swelled as eyes followed the man whose audacity once matched the glitz of the strip itself. Benny Sirocco's arrival didn't go unnoticed, least of all by Vinny. Benny's trademark braggadocio was confined to the fanning of cards in his hands as he sat, the light playing off his sharp features. Vinny's eyes narrowed at the sight, a silent reel of shattered brotherhood flickering in his mind. Benny lounged back in his chair like a king on a tattered throne. His every gesture oozed the arrogance of a man who still believed he was Las Vegas's reigning czar. He toyed with his chips, each flip and roll a reminder of the swagger that had once brought the city to its knees. He flashed a wide smile to the dealer and nudged the cocktail waitress with a charm that seemed forcibly maintained. "Not a bad spread you got here." Benny's voice carried the honeyed tone that made everyone want to believe he was still the biggest thing to hit Vegas since Neon. The dealer nodded politely, eyes casting rapid, cautious glances at the gathered patrons who whispered amongst themselves. "Remember those golden opening nights at the Ostrich?" Benny continued. "Best damn resort this side of the Atlantic. Shame they just couldn't get it." He didn't seem to realize, or refuse to acknowledge, that the Ostrich had crumbled under its own abundance and his mismanagement. To Benny, it was still the unmissable jewel he had envisioned, a palace in the desert sand. Vinny took another sip of his whiskey, letting the burn anchor his thoughts. Benny was more than a cautionary tale. He was a glimpse into the abyss that Vinny himself skirted daily. "Boss," Frankie appeared at his side, eyes scanning the scene below. "Do you see who's sitting at the tables?" "I see him," Vinny replied, keeping his voice low. "Saw him the moment he walked in. Question is, what's he planning now?" Frankie shook his head, brow furrowed. "Same old Benny, strutting like he owns the place. But what's his angle showing up here?" "He's living in memories, thinking they account for something today," Vinny said. "Doesn't see the world's moved on, doesn't see the wolves closing in." On cue, another figure slipped into the periphery of Vinny's view. Tall and lithe, moving like liquid shadow, Carmine Santoro entered the casino with a predator's grace, his eyes scanning, calculating. "Look who decided to join the party," Frankie muttered, following Vinny's gaze. "The Viper himself." Vinny's muscles tensed, the atmosphere shifted as Carmine glided through the maze of cards. The Golden Grotto's floor, once resounding with the clatter of chips and the jubilant chime of slot machines, had plunged into chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Tables were deserted, roulette wheels spun purposelessly, and the once vibrant lights of Vegas shone dimly on the gory aftermath. Vinny's sanctuary was violated, the air now thick with tension. Shattered from the event's brutality, Vinny's composure was like the calm eye of a storm as he stared down at Benny's lifeless body. Benny lay sprawled on the casino floor, his once glitzy suit now marred with dark stains. His face, which had charmed many and deceived just as many, now wore a mask of finality. Vinny's eyes flickered with a mixture of regret and anger that simmered just beneath the surface. Benny might have made mistakes, might have skimmed from the wrong people, but he didn't deserve to die like this. Not here, not in Vinny's house. A set of uniformed officers made their way to him, their badges shining with misplaced authority. Heads turned, waiting for Vinny's reaction. Without a glance, Vinny spoke to Frankie, who was standing a safer distance away. "Frankie, hang back. Let's see what tales these uniforms spin." "Yes, boss." Frankie didn't budge an inch, his sturdy build a pillar among the scattering crowd. The leading officer, with a hat that seemed 2 sizes too big, offered a token nod. "Moretti, no surprise about what happened here," he began, voice tinged with feigned surprise. Vinny let a flicker of a smile grace his lips. "Officer, to what do I owe the pleasure? We're here for Sirocco's body," the officer thumbed over his shoulder. "Strange times when the mob kills in broad view. And stranger still when the law arrives just late enough to miss the show," Vinny retorted. The other officer, quieter, interjected. "Live by the sword, die by the sword. Eh, Moretti?" Lines appeared on Vinny's forehead. "Easy platitudes win no favor, not here." The officer sobered immediately. "Understood, Mr. Moretti. We don't require your services. The house can manage its own." Vinny scanned the casino floor from under furrowed brows. "Do the necessary at the morgue, but leave quickly. You understand, don't you?" "We do, but it's not quite your call," the officer pushed back, shifting uncomfortably under the weight of Vinny's glare. "It is." Vinny paused, his tone dropping to a dangerous softness. "My floor." A tense silence followed, the officers making no move. They looked uneasily at each other, sharing unspoken anxieties. Frankie piped up, his voice loud and clear. "You heard the man. Best do your part and let us handle ours." The officers offered a reluctant nod, signaling to their men to start their work, a task they found uneasy under the watchful eyes of Vinny and his crew. A plain-clothed officer approached, his flashlight cutting through the haze. "This isn't a good look for your establishment, Mr. Moretti." Vinny's jaw clenched. "And I don't need the cops messing up my floor. You think I don't know what happened here? This ain't your business." The officer introduced himself as Captain Harper and arched an eyebrow. "A man got murdered in your casino, Moretti. It's our business now." In the looming light, Vinny's gaze was a stormy sea. "What do you think happened? Benny was a friend, a brother. Live by the sword, die by the sword, right? But not here. Not like this." The captain's eyes narrowed, perhaps sensing the deeper meaning. "This goes beyond a mere killing. Benny was skimming from some powerful people, I heard. Dangerous game." Vinny stepped closer, practically nose to nose with the officer. "I protect what's mine. Benny made mistakes, sure, but he didn't deserve to be butchered in my casino. If you think I'll let this slide, you're mistaken." A commotion drew their attention. Frankie maneuvered around another officer, his imposing figure a blur of determination. "Boss," Frankie called, disregarding the police. "These cops, like vultures scraping for scraps." Vinny gave a curt nod. "We'll handle it." The officer interjected. "Mr. Moretti, you need to cooperate if you want any shot at." Vinny cut him off with a glance that could freeze fire. "You don't get to tell me what I need. This is our game, our rules." Harper tried to step in, but Frankie blocked his path. "Move aside," Harper warned. Frankie's expression was a granite facade. "Not a chance, Harper. This is our business. Back off." Harper's face contorted with frustration. "Moretti, you can't keep us out of this. We have a job to do." The officer's grip on his flashlight tightened. "Look, we can help." "We don't need your help," Vinny roared, his patience snapping. "Every minute you're here is a minute wasted. If you want this city to stay standing, do your job and leave us to do ours." Harper exchanged a look with Vinny. understanding that Vinny's wrath could get much worse. "We'll start looking into it, but this isn't over." "It never is," Vinny said, soft but dripping with menace. The officers retreated, aware they had overstayed their welcome. Frankie stepped closer, his voice low. "We can't leave this unanswered." "We won't," Vinny replied, his voice a fortress of resolve. "Benny's gone, and the world thinks we're weak. We show them our strength. Tonight, we find Friddy." "How?" "No one knows where he's hiding." "Someone does," Vinny answered, his mind already racing through possibilities. "We'll flush him out." As they moved to leave, the murmur of the retreating officers reached them. "Murder in the Golden Grotto," one muttered. "Guess Moretti's not untouchable after all." Frankie scowled, overhearing. "Bastards!" Vinny placed a hand on Frankie's shoulder. "Let them talk. We'll show them the truth soon enough." Frankie led Vinny to a private exit, away from prying eyes. Vinny glanced at the departing officers. "Guts gifted by the dawn are guts nonetheless," he said, eyes narrowing as he watched the policeman haul Benny's body away. "Carmine's but a pawn, and we got bigger fish." The officer introduced himself as Captain Harper and arched an eyebrow. "A man got murdered in your casino, Moretti. It's our business now." In the looming light, Vinny's gaze was a stormy sea. "What do you think happened?" "Benny was a friend, a brother. Live by the sword, die by the sword, right? But not here. Not like this." The captain's eyes narrowed, perhaps sensing the deeper meaning. "This goes beyond a mere killing. Benny was skimming from some powerful people, I heard. Dangerous game." Vinny stepped closer, practically nose to nose with the officer. "I protect what's mine. Benny made mistakes, sure, but he didn't deserve to be butchered in my casino. If you think I'll let this slide, you're mistaken." A commotion drew their attention. Frankie maneuvered around another officer, his imposing figure a blur of determination. "Boss," Frankie called, disregarding the police. "These cops, like vultures scraping for scraps." Vinny gave a curt nod. "We'll handle it." The officer interjected. "Mr. Moretti, you need to cooperate if you want any shot at." Vinny cut him off with a glance that could freeze fire. "You don't get to tell me what I need. This is our game, our rules." Harper tried to step in, but Frankie blocked his path. "Move aside," Harper warned. Frankie's expression was a granite facade. "Not a chance, Harper. This is our business. Back off." Harper's face contorted with frustration. "Moretti, you can't keep us out of this. We have a job to do." The officer's grip on his flashlight tightened. "Look, we can help." "We don't need your help," Vinny roared, his patience snapping. "Every minute you're here is a minute wasted. If you want this city to stay standing, do your job and leave us to do ours." Harper exchanged a look with Vinny, understanding that Vinny's wrath could get much worse. "We'll start looking into it, but this isn't over." "It never is," Vinny said, soft but dripping with menace. The officers retreated, aware they had overstayed their welcome. Frankie stepped closer, his voice low. "We can't leave this unanswered." "We won't," Vinny replied, his voice a fortress of resolve. "Benny's gone, and the world thinks we're weak. We show them our strength. Tonight, we find Friddy." "How?" "No one knows where he's hiding." "Someone does," Vinny answered, his mind already racing through possibilities. "We'll flush him out." As they moved to leave, the murmur of the retreating officers reached them. "Murder in the Golden Grotto," one muttered. "Guess Moretti's not untouchable after all." Frankie scowled, overhearing. "Bastards!" Vinny placed a hand on Frankie's shoulder. "Let them talk. We'll show them the truth soon enough." Frankie led Vinny to a private exit, away from prying eyes. Vinny glanced at the departing officers. "Guts gifted by the dawn are guts nonetheless," he said, eyes narrowing as he watched the policeman haul Benny's body away. "Carmine's but a pawn, and we got bigger fish." Vinny turned his sharp focus to Frankie. "I need to know where Don Friddy hides, but that corpse has lips sealed tight. There's someone, though, someone who might just speak our language." Frankie leaned in. "Spill it, boss. Whose song we gotta hear?" "Benny had a dame. Susie, songbird at the zenith." Vinny tapped a finger against his chin. "Go unravel her tune, Frank. Coax out Friddy's nest." Frankie grimaced. "A dame, huh? They always complicate the notes." "Complication sings only to those who can't orchestrate chaos," Vinny countered, flashing a rare grin. "Do it nice, do it right." "You thinking she's the key?" Frankie's voice held a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Benny wasn't one to trust, Vinny said, his words carrying a tone of consideration. But something tells me in this Songbird's case, he might have made an exception. He must have harbored an extraordinary affection for her, Frankie rubbed the stubble on his chin. Or desperate. Or both, Vinny quipped. Frankie's eyes sharpened. You need anything else from me? Vinny held his lieutenant's gaze. Keep your ears open, Frank. No telling what might slither from the woodwork. Frankie offered a curt nod before stepping back, his figure casting a long shadow in the dimming lights. Consider it done, boss. As Harper finally circled back to try again to get cooperation, flanked by the remnants of legal order, Vinny folded his arms and braced for another tedious exchange. Seems we still have a problem, Mr. Moretti, Harper said, his tone fraught with obligation more than concern. Vinny regarded the officer with a cool detachment. Your problem's the corpus delicti, officer. Mine? Well, mine has just been carried out your door. The officer's jaw set tight. And should I suspect that this goes deeper than surface-level rivalries like I said? Vinny's eyes remained impassive. Speculate as you will, but my concerns lie in the realm of immediate action, not hypothetical musings. And those actions pertain to what exactly? The police officer pressed. Vinny's gaze flicked over the captain's shoulder toward where Benny's body had lain. Tribute and retaliation. They're old friends in this game. You're playing with fire, Moretti. Vinny's lips turned upward in a mirthless grin. Fire's been an old friend too. Worry not about my burns. Just keep it within the shadows, Moretti. I don't need any more spotlights in my district. The shadows have grown comfortable, Vinny assured him, stepping closer. Ensure your spotlights keep prowling elsewhere. Be smart about this, Vinny. The officer dropped the formality, his voice low. Don't wage a war you can't contain. Vinny straightened his suit jacket. War, like any game, is about knowing your enemies. And trust me, Benny's outlived his usefulness, Vinny whispered. Question is, does he even know it yet, and how will he be reminded? Tensions rose while he observed the Viper's actions. Benny leaned forward at the table, his voice elevated with feigned camaraderie as he bantered with a fellow gambler. The intricate web of past friendship and envy knitted tightly into Vinny's thoughts. Raise you 20, Benny declared, throwing in chips with reckless abandon, leaning back again with that same confident smirk. Just like old times, eh? Except nothing was like old times. Back then, they'd all been under the same flag. Now, even the banners of nostalgia couldn't hide the stains of betrayal and loss. Benny was still trying to play the hand he was dealt in a game that had long since changed. As the cards turned and chips clinked, Carmine's approach seemed to elude everyone but Vinny. He moved with practiced silence, each step a study in calculated menace. Carmine arrived behind Benny, a slight glance confirming his target. With a single swift motion, he looped the garrote around Benny's neck, pulling tight. The onlookers, engrossed in the game, took a few seconds longer to register the violence unfolding before them. When they did, terror flooded the room. Santoro's arm coiled around Benny's neck, a viper's embrace, as the wire bit deep. A brief struggle, short and futile, ensued, the rise and fall of a chest stagnating under the tightening wire. Benny's fight dimmed, his body slumping before the table as his cards fluttered to the floor, a shower of colorful paper tombstones. Benny's eyes bulged in shock and agony, his hands scrambling uselessly at the wire cutting into his flesh. The patrons erupted into screams, chairs clattering, glasses shattering. In the controlled chaos, Carmine delivered the final, cruel twist and melted away into the ensuing panic. Benny's body slumped forward, lifeless, his posturing and bravado gone in an instant. His infamous smile replaced by the slackness of death, a gut punch ending to a story that spun on hubris. Vinny's gaze met Carmine's for a fleeting moment amidst the chaos, a silent communique that spoke volumes. A message from Don Friddy, clear as a knock on the door in the dead of night. Frankie, breathless, appeared beside Vinny. Boss, it's a madhouse down there. Benny's dead. Santoro's getting away. Vinny didn't blink. Where? Fled the scene. We couldn't stop him without causing more of a stir, Frankie huffed. What now? Vinny's eyes were steel. Don Friddy's making his move. Benny was living on borrowed time for a while now. We battened down. Pandemonium tore through the sanctuary of the Golden Grotto as screams pierced the confused cacophony. Patrons scrambled to escape the specter of death that had violated their oasis of escapism. Frankie's voice buzzed in Vinny's ear, thick with urgency as he appeared at his side. "Boss, we need to tighten security. The whole joint's flipped its wig." Their eyes met. Vinny's glacial, Frankie's burning with questions. "Don Friddy?" Frankie ventured, the name leaving a residue of bitterness in his mouth. "Sending messages using blood and theatrics. He wants us rattled, looking over our shoulders too, jumping at shadows." Vinny's "We should hit back. Let him know we ain't scared of the dark, and we do not tolerate this on our turf." Frankie spat, the scar on his jaw twitching. Vinny frowned. "War isn't won by those who react. It's for those who outthink their enemies. Friddy wants terror. We'll give him a war then, on our terms." Benny's demise hadn't just cost a life. It had shattered an unspoken rule. Vinny's empire was now a target. He swirled his drink, the ice tinkling like mockery. The ostrich was never going to fly, but Benny didn't deserve a hit, not here. Friddy's making moves. He wants the city. Taking out Benny here was also a message to me. Frankie ground his teeth. The ostrich was a bird with its head in the sand. The Golden Grotto's a damn fortress. What's our play? A sly curve hinted at the corner of Vinny's lips. We let it be known, loud and clear, that the Golden Grotto isn't a carcass for the vultures. Santoro melted into the shadows. His part in the night's macabre play concluded. His exit was as silent as his entrance, a whisper of malice soon to be tucked away in hushed tones in every corner of Las Vegas. Vinny set down his empty glass with deliberation, the sound ringing out as a challenge. "Benny's blood is in my house, on my carpet. It's a declaration of war." Frankie's fingers clenched into fists. "So we declare right back. Give me the word, boss." "No, Frankie, this requires finesse." Vinny flicked an imperceptible speck of dust from his cuff. "Now help me manage the panic and point those blue uniforms in the other direction." Frankie tilted his head. "You don't want the fuzz meddling? Cops'll turn this place upside down. Look for ghosts in every closet." Vinny sipped the air as if tasting the fear swarming below. "No, we keep this an internal affair. I want quiet, not clanking chains." "Aye, boss," Frankie nodded once, sharp and succinct as the strike of a match. "I need you to round up the boys. We tighten the noose. No one says nothing, no one hears nothing. Understood? Clear as a bell in the night, boss." Frankie's features hardened into the familiar cast of resolve, the life of a mob lieutenant etched deep within his furrowed brow. "And Frankie," Vinny called just as the man turned to descend into the fray, "keep your eyes on the prize. I need every ear to the ground. Something about this stinks of old fish, foul and reckless." "You got it. We'll lock this down tighter than a drum, and then we find the hands behind the puppet." Frankie's words were clipped, mirroring the tension that clung to the aftermath. The chaos below had begun to simmer down, the initial shock fading into a nervous lull. Vinny scanned the dispersed crowd, his thoughts churning. Benny's death wasn't a closing act. It was an overture to a symphony of violence. Friddy had moved his night, and now it was Vinny's turn to counter. He'd navigate the webs of treachery with a dancer's grace, a puppeteer pulling on the city's unseen strings. Chapter 3, Gutting Vegas's Underbelly. The Cadillac Eldorado roared to a whispering stop, its glossy black finish reflecting the buzzing neon of the Las Vegas night. Vinny's hand gripped the wheel, knuckles hinting at his resolve beneath the tailored cuff of his suit jacket. The Raven's Roost loomed, less a building, more a shadow amidst shadows. The Raven's Roost stood as a reminder of dreams gone sour and promises turned to dust. Its brick facade, once proud, had faded into a grimy brown, marked by years of neglect. The building seemed to sag under the weight of its secrets, a mausoleum of broken ambitions. The faded sign above the entrance, hanging by a single hinge, creaked in the desert wind, as though lamenting its own existence. Vinny stepped out of the Eldorado, the door closing with a muted thud. Frankie followed, his solid frame casting a long shadow on the cracked pavement. The faint odor of decay and cigarette smoke wafted from the building's entrance, mingling with the sour scent of leftover rain from earlier that night. Frankie adjusted his suit jacket, his eyes flitting over the building with a mix of disdain and purpose. "Why not go straight to Susie?" he asked, giving voice to the question that had hovered between them. Vinny paused, his gaze fixed on the peeling paint of the doorframe. Susie is a lead, sure, but too direct. You go knocking on the front door, people start to talk. We need to get a feel for the terrain first. Find out if she's being watched, if there's a trap waiting. Frankie grinned, a rare flash of white teeth. You want to play this smart, huh? Always, Frankie, Vinny replied, a shadow of a smile playing on his lips. Always. They pushed through the door and moved down the corridor, Vinny's presence cutting through the murk like a knife. Every corner, every stain on the wall told stories of desperation and vice. Room 14 sat at the end of the second floor. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay and cigarette smoke. Each step Vinny took echoed through the narrow hallway, amplifying the misery that clung to the building like a second skin. The wallpaper had peeled away in patches, revealing the mottled plaster beneath. It was the kind of place where even the cockroaches didn't linger too long. Vinny ascended to room 14, the numbers worn like the wary faces who called this place home. The nondescript door blended seamlessly into the dingy backdrop. He paused, taking a measured breath before knocking. A knock more command than courtesy rapped against the door, which swung open to reveal Jack, his face a mask of feigned confidence poorly hiding the fear beneath. Inside, a shuffle and a faint curse. The door creaked open a sliver, revealing a pair of eyes darting nervously. Jack! The door opened wider, revealing a man who looked as though he belonged more to the shadows than to the light. Jack was in his late 30s, but the lines etched deeply into his face suggested a lifetime of rough living and even rougher choices. Thin and wiry, he moved with the cautious grace of a rat that had learned to survive on the scraps of bigger predators. Vinny, didn't expect to see you here, Jack said, his voice thin and wavering. His eyes flicked around the corridor as though searching for an escape that didn't exist. Cut the small talk, Jack. You know why I'm here. Vinny's tone left no room for pleasantries. I don't know nothing you'd. Vinny loomed closer and Jack stammered. You'd be interested in. You're smarter than that. You've heard about Benny's little misfortune at the grotto. Jack's eyes flicked to the floor. Yeah, sure. Bad business that. Bad for everyone. I need information. Vinny's voice was a smooth blade, sharp and direct. Jack stepped back, allowing Vinny to enter. Bookshelves cluttered with stolen goods and remnants of old schemes lined the apartment's walls. The room was a mess of half-hearted organization and chaotic survival, a reflection of Jack's life. A dim bulb swung from a frayed cord, casting a weak, flickering light that barely pierced the gloom. Take a seat, Vinny, Jack offered, gesturing to a chair that looked more rickety than stable. He himself remained standing, shifting nervously on his feet. Vinny ignored the offer, preferring to stand. I hear you might know something about Benny's girlfriend. Susie, was it? Jack's eyes widened ever so slightly, but he quickly masked it, sinking into a semblance of his usual bravado. He backed into the shadows of his apartment. Benny knew people. I knew him. Doesn't mean Vinny cut the air with a hand. Jack, we can waltz around all night, but we both know that tune. Talk. I got nothing for you, Vinny. Why would I? Because you owe me for that little cleanup on Fremont Street, and let's not start on old debts, eh? I've got a memory like an elephant. Jack knew the implication. Favors for Vinny weren't forgotten, and they weren't optional. With all the pleasantries burned to ash, the tension strung tighter than piano wire, Vinny closed the gap, trapping Jack against the wall. Jack swallowed hard, the dim bulb casting a harsh light on his strained features. You ever wonder what it's like to swim with the fishes in the desert, Jack? Vinny's voice barely a whisper, his hand suddenly gripping Jack's collar, lifting him just enough to make his point clear. Jack's eyes widened, his breath coming in short, terrified bursts. Vinny, please. Vinny's fingers tightened, muscles coiling beneath his suit like a viper prepared to strike. I don't like games, and I can be very persuasive when I need to be. A sharp crack sounded as Vinny slammed Jack against the wall. Jack's head snapped back, the plaster breaking away in small, dusty fragments. Talk. She's just a singer, a no-good lounge singer, Jack stammered, his hand scrabbling at Vinny's wrist. Vinny's grip remained steady, his eyes locked onto Jack's with a predator's intensity. Wrong answer. He drove a knee into Jack's gut, the air rushing out of Jack's lungs in a pained wheeze. Jack doubled over, gasping for breath, eyes watering. Wait, wait! Vinny's patience was threadbare, his tone icy as the steel at his side. Where's she singing, Jack? At the Zenith. And she was closer to Benny than his shadow. If anyone's gonna know where Don Friddy's holed up, it's her. Jack's words came in hurried bursts like the fearful beats of a caged bird's heart. Vinny leaned in, their noses almost touching. Jack's breath hitched as Vinny's eyes bored into him, searching for any last seed of deceit. If I find out there's more and you're not spilling, I'll come back, Jack. And you know I won't come knocking. Cold conviction wrapped around each syllable. Jack nodded, rapid and jerky like a broken doll. Her full name is Susanna Devereaux. That's everything, I swear on my mother's grave. With a pointed glance that spoke volumes of unuttered threats, Vinny stepped away, the pressure in the room ebbing as he retreated. Good. Stay out of trouble, Jack. It suits you better. And by the way, I know for a fact your mother is still alive. The room tightened like a noose, Vinny's presence a force that demanded answers without asking questions. Vinny's approval fell like a pardon. Good boy, Jack. Keep your head down and nose clean. He turned to leave as Jack crumbled against the wall, relief and terror a cocktail that left a bitter taste. Jack sagged against the doorframe as Vinny's form vanished into the night. The air, heavy with the residue of threats and fear, slowly began to clear. He slid down to the floor, his legs losing their battle with gravity as the adrenaline ebbed away. Jack whispered to himself, an incantation of reprieve and terror, "It's only a matter of time." In this city that gluttonously devoured its inhabitants, nobody was immune. Eventually, the darkness would come knocking, even if you were the one who always answered the door. Vinny and Frankie approached the El Dorado, a smile playing on Vinny's lips. It was the grin of a predator closing in on prey, of a war general whose plans had begun to unfold just as designed. He let himself into the car's luxurious embrace, the leather welcoming him like a conspiring accomplice. As Vinny drove, his mind wandered to Benny, a friend turned casualty in a war they both had a hand in escalating. In the rearview mirror, pain fractured his reflection for just a moment before his face set back into its resolve. Revenge was not just a thought. It was a path paved with fire, and he was ready to walk it. Streetlights became a blur as the city's pulse synchronized with his own. Vinny's world was one of constant movement, of forces colliding and fates entwined. Every life he touched was a potential asset or threat, and each decision carved out the future of his empire. In the chess game of the Las Vegas mob, pawns like Jack were necessary, albeit expendable. Tonight was all about Susie. If anyone held the key to the elusive Don Friddy's door, she did. And Vinny wouldn't rest until every lock was picked, every secret unearthed. He was the harbinger of balance, where justice was measured by the weight of loss and retribution. The raven's roost faded into the background, another scene in his vast, peril-filled panorama. Beyond the walls of its corridors and Jack's hushed confessions, the city beckoned with its siren call. In Sin City, every light hid darkness, and every echoed footstep could be a prelude to a dirge or a triumph. Vinny's eyes were cold steel, his jaw set. The hunt was on, and in the vast open theater of Las Vegas, vengeance would play out its silent, violent opus. Vinny pushed open the door of the Zenith Jazz Lounge, the creak of its hinges lost in the hum of bass and piano. Inside, the thick aroma of spirits and a smoky warmth writhed through the room. Jazz blanketed the space, each note a silken thread weaving the evening's escapade. He moved with quiet confidence, his keen eyes cutting through the haze, settling on the figure on stage, Susie. Her song held the room captive, each phrase a confession of the soul. Her auburn hair shimmered under the spotlight, cascading past her shoulders as she leaned into the microphone. The lyrics poured out with raw emotion, the weight of her life's melodies resonating with the audience. Vinny studied her, intrigued by the depth of sorrow and strength in her voice. As the last chord faded, applause thundered. Vinny waited, observing as patrons offered empty flattery. Susie's smile didn't reach her eyes, a detail not lost on him. He ambled over as the crowd thinned. Susanna Devereaux, he began, his voice a smooth cadence against the lounge's pulse. I've seen stars, but you outshine them all. Susie barely glanced up, her fingers still lightly tapping the keys of the piano she'd just used. Is that so? She replied, her tone as cool as the ice rattling in the patron's glasses. She retracted her gaze quickly, scanning the room for something more interesting than a stranger's compliments. Vinny leaned against the piano, undeterred. Absolutely, he continued. A voice like yours deserves a better stage than this. Thanks for the compliment, mister, Susie replied, her eyes flitting to him briefly before looking away again. She accepted a glass of water from a nearby waiter, taking a slow sip. But flattery's cheap in this town, you know. Fair point, Vinny acknowledged, his eyes studying her more intently. But I'm not here to give hollow compliments. Call me Vinny. Let's just say I recognize potential when I see it, and you, Miss Devereaux, have it in spades. Susie set her glass down, leaning back against the piano bench, eyes finally locking onto his with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Vinny Moretti, she said, her voice softening with realization. Everyone knows who you are. People love to talk, he replied, brushing off the notoriety. But I'm here for business. I run the Golden Grotto. We could use a voice like yours. Susie considered him, the weight of the room pressing in. I appreciate the offer, Vinny, really, but I can't just up and leave the Zenith. I need this job. It's all I have. Vinny nodded, as if anticipating her response. I get it. Times are tough, but here's the thing. I'm not asking you to choose. Keep your spot here, but sing at the Golden Grotto too. Give yourself the chance to be seen, heard, appreciated by more than just the regulars in this joint. Why go to all this trouble for me? Susie asked, leaning closer, her interest piqued. Because you deserve better, he said, his tone carrying sincerity. You're not just some lounge singer. You're a star, and stars shine brightest on the biggest stages. And frankly, a talent like yours would draw in the crowds. Susie's eyes narrowed slightly. What's in it for you, Vinny? Vinny smirked, a mixture of charm and pragmatism. Not gonna lie, having someone of your caliber at the Golden Grotto would be good for business. But it's more than that. There's someone you knew, Benny Sirocco. His murder, it wasn't just business, it was personal. You knew him well. Anything you remember could help me help both of us. The mention of Benny's name hit Susie like a physical blow. Her expression wavered, the mask of indifference slipping to reveal hurt and anger. Benny was a friend, she murmured, looking away to hide the glimmer of tears. He wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve what happened. She took a breath, steadying herself before meeting Vinny's gaze again. All right, Vinny, I'll do it. I'll sing for you at the Golden Grotto, but if I do this, I want something in return. Name it, Vinny replied, leaning in. Find out who killed Benny. Make them pay. Vinny nodded, the agreement solidified. You have my word. We'll get to the bottom of this, together. Vinny extended his hand, but Susie's slender fingers traced his knuckles instead, her touch lingering far longer than necessary. Each caress whispered promises, drawing a boundary between business and seduction that he could almost feel. Maybe we can seal our pact another way, she murmured, her voice softening into velvet. Vinny chuckled low, his eyes narrowing with a mix of amusement and intrigue. Susie, you do have a flair for the dramatic. Flair, she mused, her eyes dancing with a teasing glint. Their hands met in a shake. A fusion of resolve and mutual need bubbled beneath their grip. An alliance formed not just of necessity, but of a shared pursuit of something akin to justice. Before they could settle into their new understanding, a shadow loomed. A man stepping close enough for Vinny to catch the venom in his glare, Sal. What's this, Susie? Flocking to a new protector? Before Vinny could respond, Susie bristled. Sal, this isn't the time or place. Sal's smirk darkened the shadow of his face. Oh, I think it is. Vinny Moretti of all people, the man who likes to think he's king of this city. His eyes narrowed. We've got unfinished business, Vin. Vinny's gaze met Sal's, a flicker of contempt in his stare, as if looking at an insect that needed squashing. Sal Russo, I see you've managed to keep crawling around. Sal's posture tensed, his fists clenching at his sides. Vinny remained unruffled. We were just discussing potential opportunities. Sal sneered, lips a tight line. What does a thug know about opportunities? Vinny's response was ice over steel. More than you might think. Now, if you'll excuse us. Sal scoffed, his stance broadening. I don't take kindly to being dismissed. Susie, sensing the mounting tension, muttered, Sal, let it be. Vinny appraised Sal with steady eyes. There's a time to hold your cards and a time to fold them. Choose wisely. A vein bulged along Sal's temple, his pride pricked. I'm done with you calling the shots. In a swift, miscalculated surge of jealousy, he lunged forward, fist aiming for Vinny's jaw. Vinny stepped aside, a move as slick as the lounge's jazz riffs. His counter was swift, an elbow connecting with Sal's ribs, folding him with a grunt. As Sal doubled over, Vinny clasped his neck and drove him onto a nearby table, glasses clattering to the floor. Sal gasped, scrambling to find purchase, his blows wild but weak. Vinny controlled the exchange with a tight grip and calculated precision, making it clear he wasn't one to tolerate an affront. Sal, Susie cried out, but she held to her spot, her instincts aware this was a language only men like Vinny and Sal spoke fluently. With a deft twist, Vinny incapacitated Sal, pinning an arm behind his back. I don't enjoy cheap shots. Apologize to the lady, and I might let you walk out of here with the pride you've got left. Spittle flew from Sal's lips as he spat curses, struggling against Vinny's vice-like grip. But the fight was already draining from him, the realization of futility a bitter taste. Susie stepped closer, the lounge's light catching the fierce glint in her eyes. Sal, enough, she commanded, her words a leash pulling him back from the ledge of his own undoing. Vinny held him with a final shove that sent Sal stumbling into the bystanders who'd converged to watch. Consider this a warning. Next time, I won't be as generous. Vinny's tone didn't rise above the room's quiet conversations, but it laid bare a palpable threat. Vinny bent down, his face close enough to Sal's ear that his whisper cut through the man's labored breaths like a blade. If you value your life, Sal, Vinny hissed, his voice as cold and sharp as glacial ice, you'll back off. I'm not in the mood for these games. Sal's eyes flicked up, defiance warring with fear. This ain't over, Moretti. Vinny tightened his hold, pressing Sal's head harder against the table. Oh, it's over when I say it's over. With a final push, Vinny released him, stepping back as Sal stumbled, clutching his bruised side. Susie watched, her expression a blend of wariness and reluctant admiration. You really know how to make an entrance, don't you? Vinny straightened his jacket, the composed mask slipping back into place. I prefer exits, cleaner. Sal spat blood, glaring at Vinny with a mix of rage and humiliation. This isn't the last of me, Moretti. You watch your back. Vinny didn't flinch. Get out of here, Sal, before you really get hurt. Sal hesitated, his eyes darting between Vinny and Susie. Finally, with a defeated snarl, he turned and went towards the exit, each step filled with the promise of vengeance. Vinny turned his attention back to Susie, smoothing his suit as if nothing had happened. Apologies for the interruption. Susie sighed, her shoulders relaxing. Sal never knew when to quit. He does now, Vinny replied, a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Susie shook her head, but a small smile tugged at her lips. You've got a way with words and fists, Vinny. The jazz band, undeterred by the scuffle, picked up their rhythm, the music resuming its role as the lounge's beating heart. Vinny turned back to Susie, ensuring his expression softened to dispel the fright he knew must have taken root in her eyes. My apologies for the spectacle, Vinny said, his voice as smooth as the polished bar. Shall we retire from this place? There's much to discuss, and in more agreeable surroundings. Susie nodded, a touch of admiration mingling with her apprehension. Yes, Vinny, let's leave this behind us. Thank you, she murmured. I can usually handle Sal, but not tonight. Vinny finished. Come on, we've got our own road to pave. Now, let's talk logistics, Vinny continued, smoothing over the tension. I'll have Frankie set up a schedule that allows you to work both here and at the Golden Grotto. We'll make sure you're compensated well, and in return, you help me piece together what happened with Benny. Susie nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Deal. Just promise you'll keep your word. Cross my heart, Vinny replied, his voice steady, his eyes promising retribution. They moved to leave, the clutter of the lounge a distant thought against the expanding horizon of their united endeavor. As they went for the door, a web of gazes locked onto them, whispers bouncing off the walls. They exited, the door closing behind them, completing the first note of their jazzy duet against Las Vegas's criminal symphony. Stepping out into the crisp night air, they left behind the zenith and the vestiges of violence. Their pact sealed not just with a handshake but tried by fire.